All right, so we're gonna enter a little bit of uncharted territory on this podcast now.
Yeah, so when I moved to Houston, one of the biggest things that mattered to me was finding a church. I became like Christian. I say became, but like I identified as a Christian my whole life, but I'd say truly became one roughly probably 7 or 8 months ago. And moving to Houston, that was like a big goal of mine is how do I build that further? And I think that's a big reason why my life has gone so well. So I really want to find a church. I found one after looking at like 19 of them because I'm really picky. I think most Christians are not great Christians, and I think most Christian churches are frankly money schemes more than they are actual churches. I finally found one I like, and literally my first week there, they were like, "Hey, it's the last week to join a growth group," which is a great way for like young people to meet other young people in Houston. Basically, you just meet up. It's like 20 of us. We're all the same age. We all just moved here, except for like two of us who are from the area, and we just learn together. It's like literally it's a great way to meet people. They all have the same values as you. Perfect timing. Everything just kind of worked out. So yeah, I do that every Sunday. Fly out there. Drive out there at 7. It's like 3 hours. It's good. It's great. I love it. Okay. Yeah. So do you go to a church or anything?
So I was raised Catholic, but in the last few years, I identify myself as more of an agnostic atheist. Like I still have like a cross that I wear that I was given since I was born, and even though I don't consider myself to be a Catholic anymore,
Yeah, I love
so I
that.
haven't taken it off yet. I don't
Yeah.
know if I ever will, even if I don't end up being Catholic. And once again, not really for any reason other than emotional. But yeah, my biggest issue with God, as we talked about before previously, privately,
Mhm.
is just the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, basically. And I find it hard to reconcile with that.
That's a completely fair argument. I mean, I would say Christianity as a whole, um, I mean, it's kind of shifting away from what it really is supposed to mean. I'd say what Christianity should be centered around is the value system.
Hmm.
And I'd say the biggest benefit that you can get from Christianity is the values. I think the values are incredibly important. And I have friends that follow the Christian value system without being Christian, which I don't want to extrapolate to you, but it seems like that's something that you kind of try and do, given you still hold the cross, even though you don't believe and things like that.
Sorry,
Would you say
what are
that's
you saying
accurate?
that what are you saying that I do? I missed
Would you
that.
say you hold the Christian value system?
Honestly, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say
Okay.
that. I would say that I really only wear the cross because of my emotional attachment to it because it was given to me at such a young age. I don't remember not wearing it. It's a little bit pretentious, I guess, but it really is just like a just to contradict myself. That's why I wear
Interesting. I mean, I like that. That's awesome. That's sick.
it.
Yeah, you're talking about like the fear of so I guess what really you touched on it a little bit there with the suffering. What really brought you apart from the church? Like what about suffering and what about like Christianity do you tie to suffering?
Well, I mean, it's the fact that Christianity depicts like our world to be an imperfect world, right?
Mhm.
And that world is imperfect due to humanity and their free will, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my disconnect. That's where I find it difficult to blame humanity for the situation that we're in when we accept that our creator is all knowing, all powerful, and all good.
Right. So for me, it's more like you can't like love isn't given, right? Love is you can't have natural love without free will, right? And God created us hoping we would love him, and if he doesn't give us free will to love him and we're all just made to love him, we're almost more like slaves, if that makes sense. So that's why he gives us free will and we have the ability to separate ourselves from God and make evil, make sin and things like that, or love him and not make evil and follow him, if that
So
makes
you're
sense.
saying that like love requires a choice?
Yes, I would say love requires a choice.
So would you say that in heaven, where sin is impossible, people still love God?
I would say yes. So sin is actually not impossible in heaven. It's just you feel so much love from God that nobody wants to sin. For example, the devil was in heaven when he first sinned. It's just that people realize once you are in heaven how much better the world is without sin that nobody no longer desires sin. So actually, d- this isn't every Christian's belief, but this is like kind of the primary Christian belief, and that is you still can sin in heaven, It's just there's no desire to, because you see how much better the world is without sin.
But heaven does prove that free will doesn't necessarily require sin then. You can still
Free
a being
will.
can still have free will and have all the capabilities to make choices within their boundary of thought, but that boundary of thought could be sin could be excluded from that.
I would say you can't have free will without sin.
You would say that you can't have free will without sin.
Correct, yes.
So then does free will not exist in heaven?
Well, they still have the ability to sin. It's just that you see how desirable the world, or how much better the world is without sin, that you no longer want to. It's like
Right.
Adam and Eve before they ate the apple lived in an absolute paradise, and it was the curiosity of what would world be like if I defy God, and they chose that opportunity and brought sin into the world. And once they had sin, once you have sin, it's like addicting. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Right, but if heavenly
You
beings
continue
can
to
sin
desire
but
it.
won't, then God created them in such a way so that they couldn't, though, correct?
No, they can sin. They just choose not to because they see how amazing the world is without it.
Right, but God knows that they won't sin because otherwise they wouldn't be in heaven, right?
I don't think necessarily. For example, the devil was in heaven
So
and
you
he
don't think
sinned.
God knows if
Well,
all of the
okay,
beings in heaven are going to sin or not?
he knows which ones will sin in the
So
future and
then,
he knows which will not
so
because
what
he's
do you
all
mean?
knowing. So, okay, so God is all knowing, and just the way, not for you, because I think we've covered this before, but the way like you describe all knowingness is, imagine you have a stack of papers in front of you, and every single piece of paper is a different point in time. God lives outside of this and he can flip to any point in time. So he knows, for example, which people will defy heaven and sin in the future, and he still allows them to be there, and he knows that they're going to sin, and it's all part of his divine plan. Another way people have described it is God has written the book already, and we're just simply reading the pages as we go on.
Right.
So God does know who will sin, he allows them to sin, and it's all part of his divine plan, if that makes sense.
Right. But allowing them to is essentially allowing them to exist knowing that they will sin, right? So he could have created them with the capability to not sin.
Right, but then you no longer have free will.
But how do we have free will if he knows what we're going to do before we're born?
So I think you can have predestination. And I think most likely this is where we're going to just have different worldviews and disagree. Like I said in the previous podcast, where we just kind of we have both have logical conclusions with different conclusions, or logical, yes. So you can have predestination and
Mm.
still have free will, in my opinion. So even though God knows what we're going to do, we still have the option to choose otherwise. We just won't. So some
Does God
people.
know that we won't? Does God know all of the possible options, but he also knows how to distinguish the possible options from the actual option that's going to happen?
Exactly, yes.
So, yeah, once again, like that maybe semantically we may have free will, but not in a meaningful sense because we will never act in a way that wasn't already preordained by God, which means that like you said, the script has already been written and we're just playing it out. So, yeah, we may have the illusion of a choice, but we will only ever do what we were built to do. So like
Yeah.
when you say that like God knows every sin will ever happen and chooses to create the world anyway, like that means that God knowingly creates rapists, he knowingly creates murderers, he knowingly creates people who are going to end up in hell. He could choose to not create them, but he creates them anyway, which makes him morally responsible for every sin. Because he had perfect foreknowledge of it, he had the power to stop it, he had the option to not create the sinner, and he deliberately chose to actualize that timeline.
Correct. He created the opportunity for sin. Humans chose it. Humans do these terrible things. God is not sinning himself. He allowed for human beings to sin. He's allowing them to do these terrible things, and
Right,
we
right.
choose to do them through our free will, and
I
he
get what you're
still
saying.
grants us the opportunity to
But
go to
if
heaven.
God knows, even if we have free will in that sense, if God knows who is going to sin and he chooses to allow them to exist anyway, he is allowing that sin to exist, therefore causing it. So their sin is part of his chosen plan. You know what I mean? So you have to say, if you're going to say that, that God is responsible for all sin, not us. I mean, we are responsible, but really, God is responsible using us as a proxy.
So God, yes, God, and I think this is where, like, I kind of see where your point is, but God allowed us to sin. He's not like forcing us to sin, if that makes sense. God created us. He created us with free will, and he knew the results that would happen of our free will. He knew what sins we would commit, if that makes sense. So God creates
I
us.
get
He
everything you're
gives us
saying.
free will. Free will allows sin. Sin allows these terrible things. And even through that, he still allows us to go to heaven.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just like if a being has infinite knowledge, infinite foresight, infinite power, infinite control, which we can all agree that that's what this depiction of God has, right? Like allowing evil means you're willing it. There's no differentiating that, you know?
Allowing evil
If you
means
created
you're
the
willing.
realm, if you have infinite knowledge, infinite foresight, infinite power, infinite control, when you allow something to happen, you're willing it to happen. You know, when you allow the earth to be
Hmm.
created, you're willing it to happen.
Yeah, he is allowing sin to happen.
No,
Yes,
but
I
yeah,
would agree with that.
but that means so then that means though that he's willing it to happen.
Like,
Like
yes, he allows sin to happen.
right, but why are you willing to say that he allows it to happen, but not that he wills it to happen? Because aren't those synonymous? How are those not
Like
synonymous?
he creates sin as he created the universe.
He is the cause of sin. He is responsible for the sin.
So I would say in the all-powerful sense, this is where the bounds of God lie, which is that sin is something that exists and God cannot not create sin. For example, God also is bound, like
So
God
sin
can
exists
sin.
regardless of God?
Yes, I would say sin exists regardless of God.
So if God hadn't existed, sin would still exist.
If God hadn't existed, nothing would exist.
So then sin has
So
to
nothing
be.
could sin, but if God does exist and things are like are able to exist, then sin is a possibility.
If God has to operate within the boundaries of something, he's no longer omnipotent, though.
Right. I would say that is kind of the bounds of his power. He's not truly all powerful in the sense that he can write the laws like
So
of
then that
what
is
is
directly
good and
contradictory with the Bible, though.
I don't think so.
How?
So, I mean, in the Bible sense of all powerful, God is all powerful within the bounds of our universe, but he is not all powerful within the bounds of like what is good and what is evil. Like God doesn't write what is good.
So God does
God
not
is
determine.
what
Wait,
is good.
hold on. So God doesn't determine what's good and what's evil.
He is what is good. It's a little bit different, right? He is what is
Right?
good.
Is he responsible for that or no? Though,
I think it's
because there
just
must be a higher order being if he's not responsible for that.
I don't think we can understand that. I don't think we can understand what the bounds of God are. There's no way for us to understand
But we're
God.
making the claim that he's all powerful. We could easily just not make that claim.
Claim that he's all powerful.
We can make the claim that he's more powerful than all of us, but that's not the claim. The
Right.
claim is
I would
all.
say he is all powerful within the bounds of our universe. I don't know how to explain this. I do 100% see your point, and I still feel like I can like poke holes in it. I just can't like explain those in words. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like my brain still disagrees. So I mean, you could be right here, and I could just be slow trying to catch up. But for me, God can be all powerful while still not being able to create a world where sin does not exist and we have free will, if that
But you're
makes sense.
saying that God does not control morality. Like, still, you say morality exists outside of God, is what you were saying.
I would say God is the bounds of morality. In order to be moral, you try to be more like God.
Right. But this is where I'm confused, though, because you said earlier that morality outside of God, but now you're
Now,
saying God is morality. Those are
yeah,
contradictory statements.
I would say those are not contradictory statements.
How?
Perfect. So I can describe my perspective and you tell me where the disconnect is or where you disagree.
All right.
God exists. He does what he does and what he does is good. The way he acts is good. He can act differently and that is bad. So sin exists. He can sin, he chooses not to, right? He cannot decide what actions are possible within our universe. I would say you can be all powerful without having the ability to decide what actions are, if that makes sense. Like within the bounds of our universe, like we can act, right? You like I don't know if that makes sense. You
Not
can
really.
still like he exists, there are things that he can do, but like his ability to create actions, like he has to be able to do something. You know what I mean? God can't create a universe where he can do nothing. There have to be actions that exist and that are possible, and the actions that he chooses are good.
So when you said that God is good itself, do you mean that whatever God does is by definition good?
Yes.
So morality means whatever God does.
God is good. Like
Right. So
the
whatever
more
God
that you
does
are
is
able
by
to like
definition moral.
Correct. Yes.
So then, like, the statement of God is good is kind of like meaningless because it reduces God to like God does whatever God does. So goodness stops being a moral quality and just becomes like a synonym for God.
So I would say yes, good is a synonym for God.
Right. But then once again, that kind of like takes away the meaning of the word good.
So there are values that we can say of God. For example, like God does not have sex before marriage, or like God does not swear, God does not like these are all things that God does not do and that we do. So there are things like human characteristics that we can do that God does not do. Those are sin. And there are human characteristics that we can do that God does do, and that is not sin. So goodness is acting in the way of God as outlined by the Bible.
Right. But if God drowned infants in the flood and commanded genocide or eternal torment, you would have to call those things good because not because they
Yes.
are good, but because God did them.
So that is where God is just. God
No, but it's not only
punishes.
just, it's good.
Yes, God is just, and just is good.
Right, but
So in this
why use
case,
the word just when the word is also good? Like, like the genocide that he commanded by definition has to be good,
so
not just
I
just.
wouldn't. So like the Canaanites and the Amalekites, for
Right.
example, which are the genocides that I'm sure you're speaking of. These were societies where they would burn children,
Mm.
they had slaves, they would torture people, very bad, like rape children, all sorts of terrible things. And the correct punishment for this, you would agree, is like to eradicate
No, well,
these bad
first of all,
things.
I don't think my answer to that is relevant, but no, I don't think that's the punishment. Do you think that the infants that were killed were responsible or the animals, the cattle, sheep,
So
and donkey?
the cattle, sheep, and donkey is kind of like people believe that sin at that time could be
Mm.
transferred to those things, which don't really transfer to today. It's like an Old Testament versus New Testament, the Old Promise and the New Promise, what would happen. So the cattle, sheep, and donkey, yes, for whatever reason, which I don't understand, needed to be slayed.
But it
But
was good that they were slayed, though, is the point that I'm trying to make. I'm not even trying to make a claim about anything
right.
else other than the fact that it was good.
Correct. And this is kind of like just Old Testament, very specific things for whatever reason. Like it's the same thing as back in the day, you had to slay sheep.
Mm.
Jews would transfer their sin to sheep and then sacrifice that sheep, which we no longer have to do because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. These are things that I don't physically understand, but
Mm.
it's things that God called upon people to do in the Old Testament.
So how could an infant be morally culpable for the actions of its parents or maybe other people in the community?
So God did not call upon the complete eradication of the women and children. The belief of complete eradication in that terminology is the same as like we would say we dominated Germany in World
Mm.
War II, right? That term domination, people extrapolate to complete eradication of all of the women, children, and everything.
Deuteronomy 20:16. However, in the cities of the nations that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, you must not leave alive anything that breathes. For you must devote them to complete destruction, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivitites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you. So I understand you may want to talk about the second part of that quote, which is you must devote them to complete destruction, which may be disputable. But that first part of the quote, in the cities of the nations that the Lord your God is giving you as inheritance, you must not leave alive anything that breathes. That first quote, you must not leave alive anything that breathes, seems like it's referencing any living organism, animal, infant, woman,
You
man.
said this is Deuteronomy 3:16,
No, 2016.
2016. I will
Yeah.
say I have not read this verse. Um, So anything that I'm going to say in defense is not my knowledge. This is me just kind of
Once again,
Googling it.
I'm not really even
Yeah.
necessarily asking you about this to make you defend it. I'm
Right.
only bringing this up because if God is inherently good and anything that God does by definition is good, whatever God does is moral. What I'm arguing then is that if God drowned infants in floods, commanded genocide, whether it was of children or of groups of people, and sends people to eternal torment, all I'm trying to say is that you must call those things good, not only just, but good, not because they are good by any quantifiable standards, but only because God did them. You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying that, like,
Right.
if this is true, good kind of becomes arbitrary.
Yes. I can't say whether or not he commanded a genocide of the women and children. I'd have to look into this further. But the Christian argument is he is just, right? If there are societies that are doing terrible things like raping children and burning children and doing all of these terrible things,
Mhm.
you would hope that a just God would get rid of these things, right? He would punish these terrible things and get rid of them.
He could have eliminated the possibility of this entire group of people from existing in the first place. And even if he did want to allow them to exist, as we see in heaven, free will exists, but within that free will, there's not even a thought of wanting to sin against God. So it's possible that God can create a being knowing that they can have free will, knowing that they will make the choice that they want, but eventually never sin against him. If that's possible and he knows that, right? How is that not possible on earth at the same time? And if you want
Right.
to say,
So it was possible on Earth, and that's where like the whole Adam and Eve thing is there was like perfect happiness, and then humanity decided to strive away from that, allowing for these terrible things. Now we have these terrible things, and some societies have like strived even further and further from God, which is where we have these strives like the Canaanites and the Amalekites, that God said we're doing these absolutely horrific things, and that is where the just God comes in, and he still, even though we exist, he's allowing us to exist within free will. There are bounds to where God is like, okay, these free will humans are going too far. This needs to be stopped. I am going to use my just punishment to punish these terrible things that are happening.
so you're saying a sinless world was possible and humanity did have the capacity to not sin, but humans freely chose to drift away and God knew that we were going to do that before he allowed us to exist?
Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of
But
like what?
so he wanted to create humans. For whatever reason, humans are like God. I cannot say what God is
Mhm.
like, but humans are like God. And in creating us, he knew that we would sin. That
Right,
being said,
exactly.
he still
God
gave
knowingly
us.
created beings he knew would fail him.
Yes, but that being said, he wanted to create somebody that would love him, and if he doesn't allow us to fail him, we could never truly love him. If he creates us and there's no way for us to fail him and we're forced to love him, then we never really love him. It's kind of like,
So once again, either he created this relationship between love and humanity, or he's not responsible for that relationship and he's not all powerful. You know what I mean? Like either that the fact that love requires choice, in your opinion, is a law set by God. And if it's not set by God, then God can't be all powerful.
God. The actions thing. Like love, I would say, is something like God can love us. That is an action that he has the ability to do, right? The second we start eliminating the possibility for actions and values, then there's no bounds of which God can exist. There have to be bounds to God, and God is all powerful within those bounds, is my understanding. Once again, I'm not like a theologian. I'm not an expert on all of this, but this is just like my understanding. I could even be misinterpreting the Bible, but this is kind of my understanding of it.
Right. I mean, once again, this whole problem with the whole fallen world thing is that like God designed the nature of humanity, God designed the desire and the temptation and the conditions, and he foresaw the failure, created us anyway, knowing we would fail him. So then why did God design beings he knew would walk away from him? If God didn't want us to fail, he would design beings who wouldn't fail, like the ones in heaven. So if humans strayed, God's design caused them to be capable of straying.
So the same being that is in heaven is the same being that is me, right?
You don't think there are not angels in heaven that exist with free will?
Right. But it is literally just my soul in an angel. Like it is the exact same
Right.
Kyle that is here today.
Well,
It's just,
exactly. So okay. So this is perfect then. So nothing changes. Your soul is just transported from earth to heaven.
uh
But once you enter the realm of heaven, even if you right before you entered the gates of heaven, you wanted to sin as soon as you got up there. I'm gonna sin, I'm gonna sin, I'm gonna sin. As you're dying, imagine you're sending yourself up to heaven. You're like, I'm about to sin so bad as soon as I get up there. You walk through the gates, no matter how bad you wanted to sin a second before, the second you cross the threshold into heaven, you pass the gates, he meets you, you're let in, the door closes behind you, no matter what your intention was moments before, you are, we both agree, incapable essentially of sinning at that point, right? And whether or not that's because you don't want to at that point, it doesn't really matter, right? Because you're incapable of sinning when moments before you could have very well wanted to, right?
I would say you can sin, but when you
Hmm.
see hell and you see heaven and you see
Hmm.
both of these things,
Right.
why would you be like, I see this thing that I get to go into, and I know that if I sin, I'm going to go this other way? Why would I be like, Oh, I'm just gonna swear real quick because I think it'd be funny and cool that I get to prove that you can sin in heaven. You know what I mean? So you can sin. It's just you see how amazing heaven is, and you're like, why would I ever want to go back to hell? And
So
hell is
can you
not like
consider sin? Can you even think of sinning? So do you think
absolutely
that
yes.
I could be up in heaven as a soul and want to extinguish another soul and want to kill another person in heaven?
Yes.
But I wouldn't be able to go through with it, right?
You would be able to, you just wouldn't want to. Like, why would you?
Right.
Why would you give up
So
heaven for hell?
what do you mean? I wanted to. What if I didn't like God and I wanted to go to hell and I thought it was
Then you
unfair?
absolutely then you go to hell.
Right, but we also, according to Christian doctrine, that doesn't happen because heaven is a place that is devoid of sin, correct?
Right.
By definition, heaven doesn't include sin. So in order for it to be heaven, there's not sin there. So in order for this whole idea of heaven to be true, every being that has ever entered heaven has not sinned, you know? So God knows this because if he knew that somebody would enter heaven and sin, he would have never allowed them to enter heaven because then that would make heaven not heaven, you know?
Right. So he knows that when every single human being, every human soul sees heaven and sees how amazing it is, us as humans are going to be like, wow, this is truly so much better than what I was at before and what hell is. Why would I ever want to go to hell? Like, that is why heaven is so amazing that you have absolutely no desire to sin, is my understanding.
Right. But that would be, you would also say, is God's doing, right? God intended for that to be such a in such a way. He created the realm of heaven with the boundaries such that you wouldn't even desire it because you would realize how much beauty is around you that there would be no innate desire from you to commit sin. So that is God's doing though.
So the reason heaven is so amazing is because there is no sin. Heaven is amazing because there is no sin. Hell is terrible because it is sin. Sin is what is good and bad. Sin is what is bad. The absence of sin is what is good. Heaven is good because there is no sin. God is good because he does not sin. Sin is, I guess, the bounds of God. That makes sense, I suppose. From my original like actions, the actions that exist that are possible are sin.
So if you're saying that we wouldn't want to sin in heaven though, like if your nature determines what you want and you always act in line with what you want, then your moral choices in heaven are determined too.
Right. So people today, for example, want to like be an NFL quarterback when they're a kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you do something like you scroll on TikTok and you absolutely love that, right? It's just you do it all day. You know that you could go out and train and become an NFL quarterback and do all these amazing things. But it's the momentary desire of, well, I just kind of want to chill and scroll TikTok. This other thing would be hard. That is the reason that you don't become an NFL quarterback, right? It's the same kind of thing, right? We are on earth and we see sin and it's this momentary desire. It's going to feel good. I get to do this cool thing, and we do it and we keep doing it and we fall in love with that thing. But if you could just become an NFL quarterback, like boom, you're an NFL quarterback, you have everything that you ever wanted, you'd be like, holy shit, right? And you just have that feeling for a second, everything that you ever wanted for 1 second, you would be like, why do I want all of these things? That's kind of like the best portrayal I can have is imagine you're nothing and then boom, you have everything you ever wanted. You're like, holy crap. If I had just listened, if I had just never sinned, I could have had everything I ever wanted. And you finally have that in one moment. Why would you drop all of that and go back to the ways that you were doing before? That's kind of the thought.
So, okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like you're implying that in heaven, the soul cannot be tempted because it has like perfect knowledge of what good is, and therefore it doesn't
Mhm.
desire evil, and therefore will never choose hell because it has this perfect knowledge and understanding of the way things that truly are.
Correct.
And you believe that
Yes.
once they understand how things truly are, there's no way they would ever choose bad, right?
Correct. Yes. I
So
think I'm understanding.
doesn't that mean like that moral behavior comes from clarity of perception and not free will. And the only thing that determines what actions we're going to have is, once again, how clear our perception is and how much we truly understand. But like sin comes from lack of clarity and not necessarily free will. And moral perfection comes from seeing truth as clearly as possible. That's once again not free will. So like once you see reality properly, sin becomes irrational. It's not even an option. So this clarity that we have once we reach heaven, we could have on earth now, and you accept that God could give us that clarity now, but he chooses not to.
He does give us that clarity through the Bible.
Well, it's not strong enough, obviously, because we sin. That's the whole point.
I would say if
If the
you
clarity were clear enough, we would be incapable of sin.
right, so he gives us the Bible as the opportunity to have this clarity. Imagine if your father passed away and he left you this note. He wrote you this whole note of like everything you ever need to know in life. And you're all like you never read the note in your whole life. You're like, God, I wish, I guess you wouldn't be praying to God, but you'd be like, I wish my father would have just like left me something. Like, why is he not trying to speak to me? Why didn't he give me some knowledge or leave me something behind? And you know he has this note and you never read it. That's exactly what the Bible is. The Bible is your opportunity to learn about heaven and learn about how amazing heaven is and learn about God and learn about how much better life could be without sin. And by not reading it, you are not taking this opportunity to have the clarity of how amazing heaven is. You know what I mean? That is your opportunity at clarity here on earth. It is the Bible. That is
Okay, so
God
if no one
telling
in heaven
you
wants
how
hell because
amazing
they
heaven
see
is.
reality clearly, and humans don't see that clarity, that lack of clarity, you believe, is our choice and not God's choice.
I'm not sure I fully understand, but I believe so, yes.
I guess, I guess what I'm saying is like, if our desires once again are ultimately determined by our perception level, and in heaven our perception level is perfect and we understand everything, then doesn't that mean on earth our desire for sin comes from an imperfect perception? Like it comes from ignorance, essentially?
Absolutely, I would say it comes from ignorance.
Okay,
I
so
would
that
say
ignorance, would you say that that ignorance comes from design? In the sense that God chose to bestow us with that ignorance as opposed to enlighten us at this stage in our existence?
we inherently have this ignorance,
Okay, so
as
then
the
therefore sin
adherents
is
to this
inherent.
ignorance.
Sin is inherent to human existence, which means it cannot be freely chosen.
So I would say I also have this inherent ignorance, and it takes effort to not have this ignorance. Like reading the Bible is not easy. It takes effort for me to read the Bible, right? It's boring, it's confusing, it sucks, but I am going out of my way to do these good things, right? Having sex before marriage is easy. It's feels good, right? It's this momentary dopamine hit. It's hard to be abstinent until marriage, right?
No, I'm saying the reason why we sin is out of ignorance, because if we only knew, then we wouldn't be sinning.
Right.
Right, but the reason why we don't know is God is in God's control.
Right? You could see how much better the world is by not sinning. Once you quit sinning, you see these amazing impacts in your life, right? That's what like really drove me to Christianity. First it was like skepticism of Christianity. I looked into it and whatever. But what kept me Christian, what made me feel like I know that Christianity is correct, is because as I started following the like laws that the Bible is teaching, I noticed how much better my life is. As I am removing sin from my life, these things that I thought were fun and amazing, I'm seeing how amazing the impacts are on my life. Right? The clarity and the ability to remove this ignorance is there. It is the Bible. It is that letter that our dad, our father, God had written for us.
The problem with that analogy is that it's not a dying father, it's a father that's watching us suffer while being completely able to tell us at any time.
Right. And he does tell us.
The reason why there's no sin in heaven is because we are so enlightened to the point that God has given us all the answers so that we would not want to sin, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so if you're saying that, but then you're saying on earth, when human beings sin, it's because we're ignoring the signs that God tells us. That directly contradicts your point that sin only happens because we don't know, because we don't have access to this knowledge. Because if we had this knowledge, if we had the perception, all human beings would choose not to sin. So the
Right.
reason why we don't sin, you're claiming, is purely because we don't have the information that God did not give us.
Right. We do have the ability for that information through the Bible. By reading the Bible,
Well, I
you
feel like
can
when you read the
gain that
Bible,
knowledge.
I mean, you could say that, I understand that, but this is it's hard to argue with at this point because it seems like this is a very personal reason at this point. So I definitely don't want to dispute like when you feel like when you stop sinning, you felt like your life improved in quality. I can't dispute that at all.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's fair.
So
Absolutely.
it's difficult, and yeah, I don't want to. like seem like I'm just trying to like tear apart your beliefs or anything
Absolutely
like
not.
that.
Like, I mean, it may seem that way for the people
Yeah,
watching this, but like,
yeah,
I know you. We've spoken a lot
yeah,
off of this podcast. Like, I know that you are coming at this from logical reason, which is
yeah.
exactly how you should be thinking about it. And there's nothing you could really say that would make me be like, he's doing this just to like attack me as a person, right? It's just us as people have different conclusions about the perception of the world. Yours is from an atheist agnostic perspective. Mine is now from a Christian perspective. And both of us think they are right. And we both have logical reason, in my opinion at least, to believe that they are correct.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
it's
And
good to talk about these things. Absolutely, right? You should be able, if you truly believe something, you should have the confidence in it to talk about it and find out why you're wrong. I think that's incredibly important. I mean, that's why I'm doing this, right? I'm talking to another logical individual from the other side to see if I can find out why I'm wrong. And you've given me great reasons for me to look into on why I could be wrong that I will have to look into. That is the anytime you have an opinion, that's something that I think people should go out and do is try and find out why they're wrong.
dude, thank you so much for coming on and having the humility to have these discussions with me and being willing to just put your beliefs out on the table and accept any criticism that I'm willing to give you. It takes like a lot of balls, I think, to just walk into a discussion with somebody not knowing what their point of view is or what exactly they think, and then just being willing to just throw everything you have out there and just take what comes, you know?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you coming out here and I appreciate all of the conversations we've had on camera, off camera, everything. I mean, you're a super smart guy, and I mean, I'm always happy to be proven wrong, right? Whereas most people are married to their ideas, I try my best not to be, and hopefully make them more fluid and admit times when I am wrong, when I'm proven wrong.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this, drop a comment, like the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.